Hi, I'm Karen with My Kids Gay and I'm okay. My daughter and I were talking yesterday and we were talking about her brother, and there were some things she wanted to share um, with everybody. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Mom. Hi, everybody, all of our faithful viewers and listeners. I wanted to make a series about my brother because I get asked quite often, like, oh, do you have a sibling? Do you have a brother? Do you have a sister? And I get to proudly say, I have one baby brother, and he got married to an amazing woman a couple years ago, and they had a son together this last year. People ask me all the time, like, oh, like, is he cool with you being gay? Like, how does that go? And that used to be a really common question, like maybe 10, 15, maybe even like closer to 17 years ago was like, how does your family associate with this? How does your brother feel about this? How does your mom? Yada, 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 so on and so forth. And the last time we talked about what it meant to be an ally was for a queer person, like what it meant for pride for me as a queer person, and what pride meant for my mom and other heteronormative people as an ally. Right. And I actually got a really cool message on TikTok from an anonymous person. They basically said that my brother doesn't support me and he's my only living relative that I have. Both my parents are passed. And knowing that your brother supports you brings me a lot of peace and joy, knowing that other people can still have the relationships with their siblings, even if after they come out. And I spoke to this person, the back and forth with a couple messages of like, I can't understand what you're going through because I'm very blessed to have a brother that is super supportive, and he is also raising a very open-minded, supportive young human being, which I think is amazing. We need more people like that in this day and age. So I talked to my mom about it. I was like, like having a gay daughter is one thing, but then having a supportive heteronormative sibling to support that queer adult is so important. And one of the things that we were talking about, and I think what actually kind of sparked this conversation was that Jonathan put out my brother Jonathan, he put out a pride flag in Oregon to celebrate my wife and I all the way in Colorado, which I thought was really cool. And it kind of made me think about what my journey would have looked like if I didn't have a supportive sibling. Like how that could have changed the trajectory of who I am as a human being. But not only that, changed the relationship dynamics that you have with Jonathan, mom, like that would have changed. And because he very easily could have swayed with the other side of the family and followed in their footsteps and been like, this is a sin, this isn't okay. But instead, he decided to accept me for who I was. And then he also has accepted my spouse fully. Like, Jonathan, I think, really loves my wife and she loves him. That was one of the big things that when Bailey and I got married, she was so excited. She's like, I have a brother now because she's an only child. And so seeing that dynamic between my wife and my own brother has been really great. But I wanted to kinda talk about, like, the relationship that I have with my brother and how I think if he wasn't supportive and we weren't as close as we are, like, I think that really would've changed a huge trajectory within myself, and not only, like, me being a queer person, but how I would have navigated future relationships. Like, everything is kind of like this cataclysmic spiral of, like, one you essentially kick one stone and then it rolls down a hill, essentially, right? And so I'm really grateful to say that through the momentum of rolling down this hill that we call life, like, I still have my brother's stone rolling down the same hill with me versus him veering off in a different direction.
Well, and two, when you came out, he was in high school.
Yeah.
So he was at an age and he ran around with, as he called, his bros. So you never know, like you said, how he is going to be. He didn't miss a beat when you came out. He did not. And I'm very thankful for that. It's just made everything in our family has just gotten stronger. What are you smiling about?
I just I just think of that, and I don't mean to, like, interject or anything,
No,
but
please do.
I remember when Jonathan first met his now wife, Betsy, and he called me on his way home from work, and he was like, I have a date." I was like, "Oh my god, dude, you never call me for a date. This must be serious." And he's like, "She is so cute. I've been talking to this girl, like, I've been seeing her walking around the airport or wherever he was working." He's like, I think it was at the airport, and he was like, "I really think she's cute." And I was like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Will you help me pick out my outfit for tonight?" And I was like, "Oh shit, like you're calling your sister to help you pick out an outfit for a date. Like, this is serious." So he sends me this cute little picture of this outfit that he laid out. And he had a couple shirts and he's like, "Which one should I wear?" And I remember helping him pick out his outfit. And then I was like, "You have to call me and tell me how it goes." And he was so excited. He was like, "Okay, bye." And he hangs up, goes on this date. And then I asked him, I was like, "How'd your date go?" And of course, he's like such a typical dude. He's like, "It was fine. It was okay. She was nice." Like he wasn't like super indulgent with any details. And then they kind of continued to date and well, now they're married. But that's one of my favorite stories is that we come from that generation of like millennials, 90s kids where you would just kind of off the cuff say, "Oh my God, that's so gay." Like, you would say that, and I say that still, like, to this day, like, that is a habit I cannot break.
He still says it to you to this day.
Yes, I'll be
"Hey,
like,
you're so gay."
he's gotten the green thumb from me, like, the green light, "Go for it, I don't care." And I remember he told me, he was like, "You know that girl Betsy that I've been dating?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, I did the funniest thing to her." And I was like, "Dude, don't scare her off just yet. Like, you just started dating, dude. Like, be a nice guy." And he goes, "Well, yeah, we're all talking and stuff." And he goes, "Betsy was talking about something and she said, 'Oh, that's gay.'" And he goes, I pulled the best straight face I could and he goes, "Betsy, I have a gay sister. You can't say that." And she, oh my god, I can only imagine how she felt, like, freaking out, like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry. That's so offensive." And then he starts laughing. And when I finally met Betsy and I finally got to meet her in person, Jonathan was like, "I can't you remember when I did that to you?" And she's like, "Oh my god, yes." And I was like, "You're such a jerk, Jonathan." And I told Betsy, I was like, I'm coining for you to say that that's okay. You can say that's fine in front of me. That's fully fine. I don't care. I say it all the time." And Jonathan was like, "Don't take all my fun away." And I think that little snippet of, like, how he has used humor to keep that the normality within our relationship is just, like, who he is, like, as a person. And I think if he had completely changed and tried to be as, like, politically correct as possible instead of being like, "That's so g that's ridiculous." It would've, like I would've been like, "This isn't you. This
This
isn't
isn't the
you."
way never spoken to each other.
And no.
Well, I can remember you were in high school and Jonathan said, "You're so gay," and you're arguing with him. You said, "Well, you're so gay." I said, "Both of you stop because there are people in this world that we know that are gay and they're gonna be so offended by." I remember having that conversation with the 2 of you in our living room.
Little did you know.
Little did I know, just completely over my head. So,
But I think too, to a certain extent, like, now that I've grown up with Jonathan, he's always been like my baby brother and, I love him unconditionally. Don't get me wrong, there's times where I've wanted to strangle him, just like I'm sure he has me. Like, that's that normal sibling relationship, but we grew up together in, like, just a difficult environment. Like, I think our childhood wasn't necessarily terrible, but it wasn't necessarily the best either. Considering what you see on the news now, like, most people would be like, "Okay, like, that's not terrible," but for us in the '90s and the thousands, it was difficult, and seeing how we both grew up to be the people that we are now, and watching my brother get to be a father figure is so rewarding. It's like getting to watch that generational curse of, like, anger and resentment and everything else that's in between. It, like, literally stops with my brother and his now son, and I think that to me, like, seeing that portion of him as an adult and who he has grown up to be makes me extremely proud to have him as my baby brother.
yeah.
And it's so funny because 'cause they're like, "Oh, this is your baby brother," and he's like 6'5" or whatever. He's like a little string bean, you just loom up at him or whatever, but he's adorable. I love him. And I think one of the biggest moments for me, like, I just saw him last February before Bailey had her surgery. He was like we were singing Celine Dion to his son, unfortunately. We were all singing Celine Dion horribly off key. I'm surprised feral cats did not congregate in his driveway. But I remember we were just all talking to Warren, his son, about, like, "Oh, you're so handsome, you're so this and you're so that." You know, trying to be a progressive queer person in 2026 6 is hard because you wanna be, like, gender neutral and you wanna be affirming and all these other things, but you can slowly feel yourself slipping into some of those, like, gender conforming norms of, like, "He's a boy, he's gonna wear blue," you know?
Yeah.
And my brother had was so great because we were talking about, like, just letting him grow up and experience, like, being a being an adult on his own, and Jonathan said I don't know how this conversation started, but he was like, "You're gonna grow up one day, and you're gonna fall in love with somebody, and she's gonna be beautiful," and then he kinda paused, and he said, "Or he." Or they them. We don't care as long as they have a good credit score. And I was like, "You would say that." And, Jonathan was, like, laughing, and he's like, "I don't care because 'cause I'm gonna love you regardless." And I was like, That's good. That's a great ally right there. Allowing your child to be who they are and the unconditional love from the moment they're born that it never stops. Like, that to me was like, because we used to be the Weaseling twins together. Like,
You
we
still
were
are. Don't say used to be. You still are. You 2 get together and all bets are off. And even Bailey, your wife goes, "Oh my gosh, they are the Weaseling twins." I said, "Bailey, I told you. You should have seen them when they were younger. Now they at least have a little bit of a conscience. But you 2 to get together, what one doesn't think of to do, the other one does, and then you cheer each other on. But it's always in good fun. You were never mean kids.
Oh, never malicious, just, like, completely mischievous, always
Yeah.
getting into everything, doing all kinds of weird stuff, and Junie just he would always laugh every time we told him a story.
Oh, he loved it. He loved it. Some of the stories you guys tell me now, we won't go into them on the podcast, but, yeah, some of the stuff you guys pulled I mean, I saw what you pulled in front of me.
Sure.
I can only imagine what you guys were doing when I was out of the house, and I don't wanna know anymore. Ignorance is bliss. But, I share with parents all the time that if I had disowned you, that it would have affected my relationship with my son. And, you and I talked about I ended up the book was written because I had an experience in late 70s, early 80s. I had a family member that got mad at me and started a rumor that I was a lesbian because she was mad at me. And it went through high school like there was no tomorrow. And at that point in time, everybody thought that it was a choice. It was a choice to be gay. And I'm kind of glad that I had that experience. It was horrific, for a 17-year-old to be faced with that and to be ostracized in high school the way I had been ostracized, but it also made me realize that nobody would choose to live this life. And I understood very quickly that people didn't choose. And so I kind of feel like maybe that happened to me so that what life had coming for me, I made better choices. I was more of an ally. I wasn't outspoken or anything, but I understand at a core level, no one would choose to be ostracized by society. And so, yeah, so those are the things that shaped me. But I also share with parents all the time that if you disown your kid, you're going to affect the relationship with the rest of your children as well. It affects the entire family.
Well, and I think too, like, to kinda touch base on what you're if anyone hasn't read the book, you had the family member that you're referencing to is one of your own siblings that started a rumor about you, that you were a lesbian, and it kind of damaged um your high school social circle and gave you some type of anxiety about different things that had happened and progressed. And I think if and having that experience from a sibling do that to you and how that made you feel, like having the stark difference within my own sibling, like Jonathan had every right, however he wanted to handle it, could have been like, "You know what? I don't support you.
Yeah.
This isn't something that was taught to me
Or I'm comfortable with.
I'm comfortable with because, I'll touch back on some of the TikTok comments that we've been getting on some of our snippets, but the generation and the age that this all happened in was almost 20 years ago. So it wasn't something that happened like last week. It's not something that happened 5 years ago. It's not something that happened like 7 years ago. Like this happened. I'm 36 and I was 21 when this happened.
Right.
So 2021. And I think like the time frame for that situation to happen is completely different. The mindset that was around LGBTQIA plus and the community was completely different. For people that were alive and either closeted or coming out at this time frame will understand the significance of what it meant to have supported family because it was so rare to have supportive family.
Yes, yes.
Now it's more like, this is why aren't you supporting your children? Like that mindset is so common, but at the time that this all transpired, it was not common.
Well, and 2, when you came out, there was still a strong indication that it was all about choice, and I know a few of my friends, had made the comment, "She choose to be a lesbian," and I'm like, when she decided not to pretend to be straight.
Do you know what my answer was to that?
What was that?
When the 1999 movie Brandon Fraser, The Mummy came out,
Oh,
that was my gay awakening. The mummy scene, like the scene where the women are in gold with swords, that was it, and then, that later that night I'm gonna say it. Later that night yeah, it's fine. Later that night, my sneezed in my bedroom, and my fairy gay mother flew in because no one blessed me, and she whacked me with her little baton, and that's how I became a
uh,
Ask your other gay friends if their fairy fag mother flew in the window and bopped them, because that's how all gay people come to be. I just spit the facts, I'm not
there's gonna be some heterosexual that's trying to figure this out, and they're gonna go, "Huh?"
be like,
There's a fairy that runs around and converts kids. I heard it on TikTok.
"I heard they look like Richard Simmons. Rest in peace."
Rest in peace. But yeah, no, it just, everybody I've talked to, everybody I know, they're like, the first time I had a crush was on, somebody of the same sex, and I knew that something was up then.
Yeah. I mean, I never had that, like, I never, like but I know now it's because, like, I'm more into, like, personalities and physical appearances, but I never had that, like I remember some of my friends in high school were insane. They'd be like, "Oh my gosh, he's so cute," and they were, like, insane, and I just remember they're like, what do you think of him?" And of course, you're like, "Oh yeah, Josh is swell." That would not sound gay in high school. But anyway, going back to some of the TikTok comments, there was a video that it was a snippet that we posted from our last conversation about like being gay back then in the 1900s. Back then when candle and horse buggy was the only way you could get around. I think too, like, I've seen older gay people commenting on that video. It's not just young people, it's, like, older queer people, and they're like, "This is so important. This is it." Because, yes, like, I said this the last video, and I just really like to hone it in is because the reason why we have these parades and events, and we need people like you and my brother and his wife and my nephew and politicians and teachers and scientists and everyone. If you are gay or you are a supporter or you are an ally, like your voice matters. This isn't a dying cause. It seems like every year we take 10 steps forward and then something happens and we're knocked back like
Yeah,
5 to 10 years. And especially right now, like we're seeing a lot of really weird things happening in society. And you being an advocate doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go beat down doors and be like, "Have you heard about the fairy fag mother, she can come for you too," like, you don't wanna say that. But I do think in a certain sense, having people have voices and showing, like, "I'm not gay, but I believe other people deserve a right to
right.
life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness." It's in our indoctrination, but you're only allowing it for certain people, like, where does the line
What
cross?
what the conversations I end up having is, they're like, "Well, I don't it doesn't bother me."
But
No, they don't even do that. They go, "It doesn't bother me." And the problem I have is that, like, they hold hands and they shove it in my face. And I'm like, "Huh?" Because we're having this great conversation and all of a sudden it veers off. And I was like, "Let me ask you a question." They're like, "Yeah." And I go, "When you hold your wife's hand or your husband's hand, what are you like? Is it a sign of affection or are you like shoving it in somebody's face?" Because they just have not connected that the love that you and Bailey have for each other is the same love that they have for each other. There's this disconnect there.
well, yeah, because it's kind of like it's the idea of the other. Right? So, like, society has made gays and straights, right? So you have straight people, you have gay people, and then you have transgender people, and then you have little pockets of like
And those
socioeconomic
other people, how would you say those people?
those people. And within these certain sects that we have given ourselves as a society to understand and to have like-mindedness or separation or however you wanna do it, there are also little subsects of like race, socioeconomic status, your skin color, your ethnicity, your orientation, because sexuality and orientation, like gender orientation are 2 totally different things, right? So,
Mhm,
like, we have all these little subsects within these groups that create smaller little pockets, and then like separate ourselves further and further and further from this larger understanding that we're technically all just like like moving meat sacks with souls inside, right? Like we're all this everything that we are experiencing together as a collective, we all experience the same thing. We're just like on a different timeline, right? So like someone's born today, right now as we're speaking, their timeline starts now versus someone's whose timeline ends right now. So like we're all in, and I hate to be like this kumbaya, we're all in it together. But if you stop and think about it, like what idea do you have about being a gay person makes it not okay? Is it religious? Is it personal? Is it that you're not okay because you feel a certain type of way when you see Hugh Grant on TV or Michael B. Jordan? Because same, it's okay. Like it's fine. And I think too, like seeing a lot of these older queer people coming into these TikToks and commenting,
mhm,
I remember when this wasn't okay. I still see this, I still have this anxiety about talking about my spouse in a
mhm,
workplace because I worked at when I in 2015, oh, 2013, 2014, I worked at Kohl's when Kohl's had their own beauty department. Like Kohl's had its own beauty before Sephora came in and snagged it all up. I had some manager, I can't remember her name. She was god awful. Bailey's aunt Shelly came in to get her makeup done. And Shelly and I are just laughing. We're having a really good time. And my manager did not know this was my wife's aunt. She had no idea who this woman was. She just saw us having a great time together. And when Shelly, Bailey's aunt, went to go check out, my manager pulled Shelly aside and said, "Hey, was that woman bothering you? Did she make you feel uncomfortable while you were doing her makeup? I need to know."
mhm,
And Shelly's looked at her and looked at me and she's like, "That's my niece. What do you mean?" And it kind of like click started everything for this woman because she's like, oh, she's not this delinquent heathen that's just being a predator towards women. Like she has family, she has friends that come see her. She has a life outside of work. And I think if we stop looking at people in this box, right? Like you see me, and the first thing you're going to think of me is either one of two things. She's a gay woman, because that's a common thing that people associate other people with, right? It's just human nature. Like you're a gay woman, one, or two, that's Rachel, and she is getting her master's in art therapy. She's
mhm,
an art therapist. Like, you're gonna either focalize me as a queer person because that is, like, the first thing that you have to think about, and if that's the first thing you have to think about when you meet someone is they're gay, they're transgender, they're non-binary, or
heterosexual.
heterosexual, whatever, if that's the first thing you fixate on, then that speaks a lot of volumes in yourself,
Mm.
and that may require some heavy duty emotional lifting for you to break that cycle.
Yeah, because that is a really hypersexuality that
Yeah.
you're operating off of. I mean, everybody's sexualized to in your eyes. And just like that conversation, Sif did the last week's podcast and we did drag and she's brand new to drag and I wanted to showcase her because she's a female drag and she's part of the LGBTQ plus community. She's from a very small town in Indiana. And so I wanted to showcase her. It's not always the men and some guys
Drag is a form of art, and it's for
it is.
everyone.
And
Drag's not a crime. We can
it,
coin that.
exactly. And so some guy says, "What are you?" on the comments. I deleted them. And then some other guy, there was a snippet put up on social media, and he makes the comment about, I don't talk about my sex life. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, did something come in
Did I
on
did I miss something? Did
yeah,
something leak through?
yeah. And so I played the clip back, and she's basically talking about how much fun drag is. No, that was the clip where she was talking about finding people to support you, and that they're out there and that they'll support you. And there's nothing about hooking up, there's nothing about dating, there's nothing about a significant other, and he's talking about sex. And so I kind of like just did a spin like, "Oh, well, thanks for being" he goes, "I don't have a problem with gay people. You just don't need to be talking about that." And I was like, "Hey, thanks for being an ally." Well, then the next clip, a few days later, he writes something like, "This is utter bullshit." And I was like, "Okay, you are deleted. You are banned. This is my world too."
So, unfortunately, what you have experienced is that this individual, your friend that did the
Mhm.
drag,
Tip.
what has happened and what you have experienced is that women are being sexualized in the gay community, right? And if you don't fall into like a specific standard for men or some form of men to view this as acceptable, like if they can sexualize it in their mind, it has value to them, right? But when you break out of that mold and they can't sexualize you any further and you are no longer objectification of them, they're going to go on the attack. And this is something that I have witnessed in my own life that I don't think I've ever told you this. Um, when I was femme presenting, I had very long hair, like down to here. I wore like more feminine presenting clothing because I didn't know you could dress any other way. Like I was from the Midwest and, we had a Hollister and a Hot Topic and, we didn't have really anything else. And when I moved out to Colorado, I saw my first ever like mask presenting queer person, like a female wearing men's clothing, but very mask presenting. Still looked feminine, but had that air of like masculine energy. And I was like, two things. One, wow, that completely changed my mindset. And then two is like that old queer conundrum. I won't say it. Everyone can giggle in the comments. You already know what I'm thinking. You already know what I'm thinking. And that's when I was like, okay. And then I started flirting with the idea of cutting my hair because I saw this person. I was like, wow, I could dress like that if I wanted to. And when I was a femme, men treated me with a lot of respect. I was never really catcalled. I would get occasionally like hit on, like, oh, you're so pretty, blah, 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 blah. Like, thanks. Sorry. But then when I really started to kind of explore into more of that like soft or that hard femme persona of like, I can still look feminine, but I can wear more masculine
Mhm.
present attire, the way men looked at me completely shifted. I was no longer an object to them. I was no longer part of their sexual gratification, and men treated me poorly. Would
Well,
bump into me in stores and would give me a nasty up and down, and I'm like, "What is wrong with you?"
well, it
Like,
was
a week
I
ago, I had long
totally
hair.
kept you in the store we were in after you came out in Kentucky.
Yep, yep,
So, yeah. Well, and 2, I think Robin Williams said it best. He did a special back in the '80s, and it's on fatherhood and, completely off the chain, but he was talking about men and hunting, and he says, "If we can't F it, we're gonna kill it."
yes.
And everybody laughed, but now I'm like, he wasn't too far off.
No, no,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things that I can honestly say that I am so proud of my brother is that he is so like, I have heard him stand up for women. I have heard him stand up for women that aren't even in the room that he's never met. I don't wanna speak too much about, like, his other friends, like but I know Jonathan was banned from the football games for the rest of the year, I think his last year of high school, because some kid in another school sexually assaulted or beat up his girlfriend or
He beat
something.
up his girlfriend, and it was a baseball game, and so he went and harassed the kid, and
Yep,
the kid was supposedly was on steroids.
yep, so, like
Jonathan weighed like 100 pounds soaking wet, 6'5", and that kid probably could have snapped him in half, and Jonathan just did not back down.
no, and that's something that, like that is something that I hate, like, the term of being, like, ostracized and, like, sometimes if you have to stand up for something that you believe in, you're gonna make a couple enemies, like, I hate that term because it kinda has that pivot of us versus them mentality, but
Mhm.
that's something that I've always been so proud of my brother is that he will always support a woman in or out of the room. There's been times where he has stood up to some of my family members when they treat women poorly. And I have been out in public and I've seen him hold a door open for a woman where the husband doesn't even open the door.
Yeah.
And he'll just open the door and the woman's like, "Thank you." And he goes, "I hope you have a great day." And then he death glares the husband. Like I've seen that happen a couple times and it always just gives me so much like my soul feels happy, not because he's like not
He's just
because
a
he's
good human being, and he
yeah,
sees all human beings.
yes. And in this society, we know men have a lot of power, and him using his power to be a good human being, he
Mhm.
could turn around and treat people like garbage because he's
Yeah.
tall, has a wonderful career, he has a great family, and in society's eyes, he has everything, he has it
Yeah.
all. He has the house, he has the car, he has the wife, he has the kid,
He has a
he has
career.
the career, he has everything, and instead of him utilizing that power to be a because he could very easily be a very negative, horrible human being, he chooses to be uplifting, and
Yeah.
he chooses to be a wonderful contributing member of society, not only within his own interest, but within humanity's interest.
Yeah.
And that's something that I am so incredibly proud of him for just he wakes up and chooses almost every day.
Yeah, well, and he lives by a set of conscious decisions on being a decent human.
Yes.
And there I know he worked at a bank, and, some lady, got hit with a bunch of fees, and so he rolled them back for her.
She was a single mom.
Yes, I know she was.
She
And they
was
threatened to fire him, and he says, "I'll do it. Go ahead and fire me."
Yep,
And so, I'm like, and I told Jonathan, I said, "You did the right thing." I
yep,
said, and he told me, he goes, "How many billions do you need this year to make a profit?"
exactly.
So,
And I think too, like, it's one thing for a woman to have that mindset, right? Because it's kind of ingrained in us by
well,
society.
we've all had the struggle.
Right.
We've all had the struggle. We've all been, I mean, the statistics, like 7 out of 10 women are attacked by someone they know.
Mhm.
A lot. That's 70%. And
1
so,
in 3 women experience a form of sexual assault.
yes.
1 in 3.
1 in 3. And so for a man to come in and recognize it and take a stand, because he's the minority in this scenario. I mean, straight up, you know? So that speaks very, very highly of any man that would come in with that mindset.
Jonathan and I, when we were growing up, we had your dad, Junie. We always would kind of joke around and they had the WWJD
Yeah.
bracelets, you know? What would Junie do? And one day, I hope that he has grandkids that would say, "What would John do?"
Yes.
'Cause the life that he is living and how he chooses to interact with people and how he chooses to be inclusive is something that I think Junie would have installed in
Yeah.
him, and been very proud to see how he has changed and grown into the dad he is, 'cause he's always gonna be my baby brother. I'm always gonna remember the day that he was born, but he's getting to experience being a father with his own son, and I'm just so excited to see that he is continuing that legacy of compassion and kindness and empathy and being a genuine human being into his own son is something character isn't something that can be bought. Character is something you can't no amount of money in the world can buy you good quality character, and he's been blessed to have great character and height.
And curly hair.
Yes. It makes me so sad because you have really pretty, like, curly, wavy hair. Dad kinda has curly, wavy hair a little bit, and then Jonathan has curly hair, and the universe was like, "The only straight thing about you, sis,
Yeah, you
is"
have Junie's hair.
gosh,
Straight up. You got Junie's hair.
it's great, but it sucks sometimes because then I would
Yeah.
love God, if I had curly hair, I'd be unstoppable, but
God knew what they were doing.
they're like, "Well, you
You
can't
can't
have
give
it
it all
all.
to her.
You can't have it all."
So, okay, so if a sibling is having a hard time with the person that came out, brother or sister, what advice would you give them? Because I know what I tell parents all the time. I always say, it's the same child, that nothing's changed because this has been there all along.
I guess what I would say is what about you makes this uncomfortable for you? Because ultimately, when you have a gay sibling, that lifestyle really doesn't affect you. Unless if you guys are, like, in the same house together and they're doing like, if your sibling is queer and they're younger and they live at home and they are doing risky behaviors, like doing drugs to not feel what they're feeling, having illicit partners, like people coming in and out of the house while you're home and it's causing harm. If they are doing any form of reckless self affirmations, like taking steroids or binding unsafely, they can cause a lot of harm to the bodily selves, or if they're having a mental health crisis. Those are all things that can affect a family dynamic. But if you're an adult and none of these things are happening and you have a sibling like that is gay or transgender or bisexual or non-conforming queer relationship, what and none of those things are happening where they're harming themselves, they're on drugs, they're harming other people, they're a risk to themselves or other people. Like what about that relationship is uncomfortable for you?
Right.
And ultimately, that's the thing that I would ask people is like and 9 times out of 10, this is just what I've heard. I'm not saying this is like every conversation, but I hear quite often, "Well, they're gonna go to hell. They're gonna go burn out an eternity in hell, and I don't want that for them." And I'm gonna use your line because 'cause I'm spiritual, I'm not non-religious, that gives me an easy that I don't wanna say a cop out, but that gives me an easy way to be like, "Well, that doesn't work for me." But
Mhm.
there's a good majority of people that religion plays a huge part in their daily life, and they need that guidance to have fulfillment. So I can understand that. I can empathize with it. I can try to see your point of view, but ultimately, when you say what you say, God doesn't make junk. And so you have to kind of think about, well, if your God made someone to live a life of sin, they have to live by the religion and only that religion. They have to give up the one thing in life that makes them true themselves and live a lie to
Or
get
live alone.
or live alone, a very long, lonely
A
life.
lot of what I have found recently, now the Christians are going, "Well, if you really feel this way, then you should just not have a relationship with anybody." And I'm like, "What the hell? We're designed to be social creatures. We are designed."
Involuntarily celibate is
Yeah,
what it says, yeah. Voluntarily celibate, sorry.
yeah.
Voluntarily
And
celibate.
I cannot imagine looking at you in your 20s and saying, "Don't go out and find somebody. Just be by yourself." I cannot imagine telling
If it's
you or
if it's
expecting you to be that way.
if it's easier for you to understand someone being forever alone and miserable and unhappy versus them being in love with someone of the same sex, that is a you problem.
But
That is
I
a you
cannot
problem.
imagine telling you at 21 or 22 not to go find somebody.
Well, and then what happens in the same stroke is that they are going to secretly date and they are gonna find somebody that tells them they love them, and they may not.
Yeah.
So when you tell someone to not it's like, don't go look in the fridge and look at that cake. Don't even touch it. Don't even look at it. You can't have that cake. That's my food reference, okay? What is that person going to do? They're gonna go sneak in that fridge when no one's looking and take a little bit from the back. I'm never gonna that was a horrible reference. Can we cut that out?
Try again. Might leave I have
Don't
to
lick
be a
the cake from
boy.
the back. I feel like we should leave that in there. I think that's great. Everyone's gonna be like, "God, it's great."
She
Anyway,
just say that.
we sure did. You heard it here first.
But no, you're absolutely right. But I mean, I just was like floored when I someone had said that. And I'm like, who in their right mind wants their child to be alone the rest of their lives?
This is something that I think should be mandatory in our culture. I know it's not going to ever be because we are so stigmatized around mental health. And our culture, the American culture, is so Christian like centered that a lot of people are going to have a really hard time swallowing this pill if they're listening. I truly think that family therapy or group therapy should be mandatory when your children become of age, like when they legally can go into a court of law and tell the judge what they want in their lives. I think eventually I would love to see this. I would love to see where you get like sessions of family therapy for 3 months to help you and your children navigate certain things. And you can use it at any time. It doesn't
Right.
necessarily have to be when they hit 12, but if something comes up, like, my God, not even just if they're gay, hey, my friend committed suicide and I don't know how to talk to my kid about it.
Mhm.
Hey, my kid's friend from softball or soccer had a fentanyl overdose. They went to a party and had a fentanyl overdose. I know a kid that lost 5 friends this year to fentanyl, and she's very young. She's like 20, 21, and she's lost 5 or 6 of her friends to fentanyl this year. Some of it from, like, going to a bar and being drugged from just standing at the bar, and some of the kids are using drugs. That is a real reality that we have, and the fentanyl crisis is real. But I think it would be great as a society if we gave more options to mental health, and not even that, just different ways of communicating. Like, can you imagine, like, if that had been provided for half of my classmates in high school, where they could have had a free, especially in our area, like there's a school counselor, they're already getting paid salary. How amazing would it have been if that school counselor took 2 Fridays out of the month and said, "Hey, like, we're gonna open a school assembly, and
Mhm.
I would love for everybody to come in if your parents allow you to, and just have open therapy or like a group session within your age group."
Well, and I think that's where, like, the support groups come in and things like that,
And
and
that has changed drastically since I've been in high school.
but it still needs to
Drastically.
change more because that we still have a stigma in this country that if you're going to counseling, that you gotta be a little bit of on a wackadoodle and you should be able to pick yourself up and move through it yourself. I think counseling should be like getting your oil changed on your car. We maintain our cars better than we do our psychological health in this country.
Yes, yes.
And so I don't think there's anything wrong with talking through something or, sharing a concern or,
Yeah.
instead of keeping it all up here and then trying to figure it out and just spinning your wheels. Yeah.
There's yeah, there's no sense in any of that, and I think we have a long way to go with how people view mental health, and how mental health is gonna be the whole billing process is now changing, and it's not gonna be the best for therapists, let alone clients. And I think too that this is gonna have this weird, like, snowball effect, that it's just gonna kind of ricochet down through a vast majority of different mental health services, and it's gonna make harder for people to get those resources. And I think now more than ever, we truly need it, and it's so important.
Yeah, and there are online support groups as well. As I'm going through, I'm finding them for other parents and stuff. I had a parent reach out to me, their child had a health scare, and she goes, "I need a support group." And so I reached out to people, was able to find 3 online, I sent them to her that I was not even and then the people that I had reached out to, they're like, "I didn't even know that this existed." And then they said, "What, parents asking for support?" I said, "Yeah." And they go, "That's something we need to work on." I go, "Yeah, parents need support. They're supporting their kids. We need support too because we have our own fears and concerns and we have our own, I don't want to say battles."
Well, you do. I mean, you do
Yeah.
because, like, especially, like, younger parents now, like Jonathan's age,
Mhm.
a little bit older, like 10 years ago, they have a completely different battle than what you did when you were raising me and him. Social media, having
All the
access. Yeah.
electronics and yeah.
Having access to a phone, having access to an Alexa that can hear you at any point in the house and send you an ad on your TV if it's connected for
Mhm.
different things. Like, the things that these young people are gonna be experiencing and how they're gonna grow and develop is going to be astonishingly different for generations, and I think it's gonna be very scary. I'll be interested to see, like, I was literally just talking to my wife. I was like, there was an ad on TV for a flying car that's being promoted in Japan. Like, Japan has the first flying car, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, a flying car?" And Bailey's like, "Imagine what Warren's gonna see when he's our age looking at TV." I was like, if they even have TV, like, it
Right.
could be something in your glasses, like, you never know. And I think parents do need support groups because we are completely if some kid was to come up to me and ask me something and be like, "Someone sent me something on, like, I don't know, an app, like some app, and how do I respond?" I wouldn't if I don't know what the app is, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm
Mhm.
not gonna know what some of this lingo is that the younger kids are saying. Like, I try to stay hip with it, but my god, it changes so fast.
You sound like an old person now.
Yeah, I just can't keep up with it, I swear.
You find out you're not cool after all.
Oh my god, I actually threw away all of my skinny jeans because they're like, "Ew, it's so millennial," and I'm like, "Okay, skinny jeans are gone." But I will never get rid of my Catwing eyeliner, I won't do that. I need that to survive. But I think parent support groups for parents and siblings is so important because if your loved one comes out that they are gay, transgender, non-binary, whatever, there is a whole you're going to be dunked into this world that you're not really familiar with. You're going to you're going to have to relearn a couple things about how you communicate, especially if that individual is transgender. You're going to have to learn pronouns. You're gonna have and you're gonna screw up. You are gonna screw up so hard. You're gonna be like, "She," and then people are gonna give you a weird look.
Or even if they want a name change.
Yes.
I mean, if you had looked at me and said, "I don't wanna be mine I don't like the name Rachel, this is the name I want," I would still be calling you Rachel probably 60% of the time, unintentionally.
Here's the thing. This is the one thing that I will say, is when I got married to Bailey, I was so excited to take her last name. I was
Mhm.
like, great. I'm gonna take her last name. It's gonna be great. And I remember when dad would send me mail and he refused to put Bailey's last name on there. And he would call me for like the first almost a year and be like, Miss Rachel Lauren and my maiden name. And that would make me go, I can't even imagine how someone would feel when they are purposely being dead named from a name that was given to them that they don't identify with.
And to explain to somebody what dead name means. If somebody's watching this, what does dead name mean?
So I'm gonna look at it. I can say it paraphrase, but I would also like to have everyone be educated.
I'll put it in my context of what I understand, and then you can correct me. Dead name is the name that you're given at birth that you don't identify, and you've chosen a new name, and people continue to use that name.
Yes, so that is correct. Here is This is the correct why dead naming is harmful.
Mhm.
Okay. Dead naming is the act of calling a transgender or non binary individual by their birth name or another former name that they no longer use or affiliate with. It can be done intentionally or by accident, but it is deeply invalidating regardless of how the action was intended. For many, the name is dead because it is no longer representative of who they currently are. The reason why dead naming is harmful, and this is done from PubMed. So this is like a published article from PubMed. It's not like some AI. Yeah.
Right.
It invalidates identity. It can trigger trauma and dysphoria. So dysphoria, I think when people think of dysphoria, they think of like you're like panicking or you're like we've all picked up our dog from the vet and they're out of it from their dental. That's another form of dysphoria. Dysphoria in this case essentially means that you are putting them back in that body that they no longer identify with. And then you can also do way more damage for risk of outing someone. Like, if God forbid I go out somewhere and I see my friend, I don't, this is a really bad example, but I see my friend John and I'm like, John, oh my God, hi, how are you? And John turns to me and says, I don't know who you are. And I get all confused. I'm like, oh my God, we went to college together. In my head, I would know it would click. Like, you are no longer like what something's changed within you. I would personally know to play dumb, but I'm also gay.
Right.
Like, when you use a former public name, you can inadvertently reveal to strangers that someone's transgender.
They were talking about it in Tennessee, and I think Texas has already got it on the books.
They tried to do that in 2001. The gay panic defense is
Yeah.
what it is. The panic defense.
They used to use that in the 50s and 60s when, gay men would be murdered, and said that, he came on to me, and I had to do this to keep myself safe, and that's how a lot of men were killed by,
Oh, well, that's why I was thinking Texas.
yeah,
There is a vote trying to repeal the ban on the Homosexual, Defense Act. They wanna make it to where that could be legal again,
yeah.
and they've been fighting that since 2025.
Yep, that sounds about right for Texas. So,
Not all Texans, we
and
understand.
yeah, no, I lived in Texas for about 5 years, so yeah.
Ooh. Ugh.
It's kinda different, so
Well, and that's ultimately in a long juxtapose classical Karen and mom story. Karen and Rachel mom story is that we start with one thing and we end on like something completely different.
okay, that's what this whole podcast is about. It's not I always say, we're unscripted, we'll prove it.
Yep. Yeah,
Ta-da! But, I mean, these are just things these are normal conversations that we need to be having, and if we're not gonna have them, 'em, we're not gonna make changes. Somebody and, when you were talking to me yesterday, you said, "Hey, I had an idea for a podcast." I said, "Well, why don't you go on and do it yourself," and you said, "No, I want us to do it together." And then you said, "I don't wanna hijack it jack it, if it's not something you wanna do." And I said, "No, if there's something you wanna speak to somebody, there's someone out there that needs to hear this." And sometimes, especially, like, when I'm on this by myself, I always feel like, "Oh, I'm just talking in the void."
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know if anybody's really listening, and then I'll go out somewhere and somebody will say, "I watched your podcast the other day, and it was really helpful." And I'm
yeah,
like, "Well, okay, one person at a time."
yes.
And so that's what we don't know who needs to hear any of this today, and we've rambled and been all over the place, but we hope that it's helped somebody.
The one thing that I would like to finish on, and this is just me personally, is that I spoke very highly of my brother
Mhm.
and how supportive he is. And there's 2 things that I wanna finish on, and I am gonna stay on track. So I'm gonna do it. First is if you have a supportive sibling, a brother, a sister, step sibling, an adoptive sibling, and they support you in small ways by putting a flag out in their yard for you, inviting you to family dinners. That is support. Allowing you to be a part of their children's lives.
Asking questions about your significant other.
Asking including your spouse in milestone events. I will tell you, I think my wife loves my nephew. I mean, I love my nephew so, 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 so much, but my wife, when we go shopping now, she beelines to the baby clothes. She doesn't even look at anything else. She's like, "For Warren." And I'm like, "Bailey, we've sent him like 5 boxes in the past 2 weeks. We need to calm down." Having her feel included is that is the best thing that you could do for your queer sibling, right? Because what if you were the only support that they have? What you could be it. And you allowing them to be themselves with themselves, by themselves, identify as how they identify, or any of all of the above. When you allow that sibling, excuse me, to be authentic and loved and supported, even if it's just from you, that is something that could never be no amount of money could ever be reciprocated from that. No amount of time, nothing. Because in the moment, you are with them and you
Mm.
support them and you love them. So, first and foremost, for those siblings out there that are supportive for their gay family members or their gay siblings or transgender siblings or anything, we cannot express how much we genuinely love you and we can't ever repay you for what you give to us. That is so important. And please, if you can't speak out and you can't be a verbal ally, just being there for them means more than anything. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go to Pride and do a bunch of crazy stuff like
Or fly a flag in front of your house.
yeah. Yeah, you don't have to fly a flag in front of your house. You don't have to wear matching T-shirts with Jonathan. I am probably gonna be getting us matching T-shirts at some point. Sorry. And then second, to the siblings that don't support their queer brothers, sisters, they, thems, non-binaries, whoever. The question is that I have for you is why first and
What
foremost,
what changed?
what changed about themselves that they opened up to you and shared something new about themselves? And to that, that was something you can't acknowledge or accept. And what about that acknowledgence and acceptance comes from you or an outside force contributing into your mindset?
Yeah, and kinda keep in mind too, the world's full of bullies. Do
Yes.
you want to be the bully in
Yes.
this scenario?
Last thing I'll say, when my I came out, my brother was so supportive and he never once batted an eye. Nothing changed. Nothing changed. We still had the same connection. We still had the same jokes. We still had the same everything. And I remembered that, and I will always remember that. And when my brother needs anything, I'm not saying every gay person is going to come do this for you. Okay. I'm not inadvertently soliciting queer members because everyone knows lesbians have a tool belt and carabiners, and we can go
You
bring
guys
a
pick up
U-Haul and do
a
whatever
U
U-Haul. Do whatever you need. There's always one handy one out of the group that's
That's
good at
right.
carpentry and one's good at painting, and I happen to be both. But I think when he ever needs anything from me, like, I just always think, "Absolutely." It's never so much of like, "Well, ugh."
And I tell you what, I'll share this with you. It always made me feel good as a parent that the 2 of you fostered that kind of a supportive relationship. I never had that with my siblings, and that is one thing as you guys were growing up that I always was it made me happy that you had that kind of a relationship with each other. It really did.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I can't speak for Jonathan, but I can speak for myself. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed I think I said that at his wedding. Oh my god, that was so funny. Sorry, segue. I said I wasn't gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it.
Do it.
Jonathan's wedding, I was writing this, like, the sister of the groom speech. I didn't know what to write because 'cause I'm like, "Well, I can't be like, 'That's so gay,' because only he's gonna laugh, like, no one else is gonna think it's funny." So, I'm trying to think of all these things that I can say that are meaningful, that have positivity and all the things that he deserves on his special day. And the closer that I said was, "Betsy, my sister-in-law, I hope you enjoy growing old with him as much as I enjoyed growing up with him." And some girl was not ready in the audience, and she was like, "My god!" She starts crying, and I'm like,
Yes.
"I still got it." And but that's so true is that, like, being a sibling means that regardless of your age, you get to experience your sibling grow up and hit milestones with you, and or you cannot have those experiences because of being ostracized.
Right.
And I can't imagine my life now if my brother had chosen to side with other forms of family and not been okay with me being gay because I would have missed out on so much from
Yeah.
his life. Like his son, his marriage, him like backpacking across the United States. Like there's a lot of things that I would have missed out on that I could never have gotten back because
Well, and it
he
just
made the
would've
choice.
just like if he had turned his back on you or I turned my back on you, it would have just fragmented our family,
Yes.
you know, and it just everything we just took I don't wanna say we just took it in stride, you know, we had our I had things I had to work through. I'm still a work in progress. I'm continuously growing, but I just know that if I had turned my back on you, it would have ruined my relationship with Jonathan and vice versa. If he had turned his back on you, it would have fragmented my relationship with him as well.
And ultimately, what's gonna happen is, especially if the siblings are young, so if the sibling is young, like 10 below, and the other sibling is older, that child may not understand when they're 10, but that kid is gonna start asking questions when they're older.
Yep.
And they are gonna start asking questions. They're gonna find the truth out somehow, and how will you explain to that child when they come to you for questions being like, "Why did you do this?" Because they were gay or
Mm,
transgender, like, why did you do that to them? You are the only one that is gonna have to answer to that child.
right.
No and it's not that other kid's responsibility to be like, "Well, I was gay and mom was religious," or, like, "They didn't agree with it." Because ultimately, what's gonna happen is that child isn't gonna follow they can follow in your own footsteps for so long, but ultimately they're gonna form their own opinion. They're gonna
Mhm.
form their own thoughts, they're gonna form their own conclusions because children grow up and they leave the nest and they find their own way,
Right.
and ultimately, the only person that you are gonna hurt is yourself in the long run because you can ultimately damage the relationship with both of your children past any form of salvage.
Right.
And that's gonna have to be strictly on you. You can't, like, have the black sheep of the family be the gay kid forever.
Right. Right. You got any parting words of wisdom, kid? Or is there anything else you wanna talk about?
Nope, I just wanted to dedicate this podcast to my brother. I love you. And I hope that other siblings, or if you don't have a sibling that supports you, that this is a little bit of peace and comfort to you. So, I hope you find what you're looking for, and if you don't have family, family necessarily doesn't come from blood, you can make your own family.
There's chosen family. If you don't know what chosen family is, look it up. You get to go and choose who you want in your life.
Yep. And
So,
Ollie's is coming to say hello to his favorite grandma.
"Hi, Ollie," and he's gone. So,
Short attention span. It's okay.
yep, that's okay. Squirrel. Alrighty. Well, that is it. That's all we've got today. So I hope this has helped somebody. And thanks for joining My Kids Gay and I'm okay.
Bye.